Good morning again. So our gospel lesson this morning was kind of long, and there's a lot of things going on. Like way too much for me to talk about if we want to get out of here before lunch. But there's one thing in particular that sticks out and struck me this week as I reflected on it. And maybe this phrase caught your attention extra hard today too. It is defiling not to wash your hands. We have some thoughts about washing hands these days, don't we? This morning in our text, we run into some issues of laws with the Pharisees. Now, Jewish traditions have a series of laws to follow that make someone clean or unclean. And the Pharisees are particularly obsessed with these kind of laws, known as purity laws. The things that you have to do to be clean, or the things that defile you. You see, to them, following these laws is what makes you closer or right with God. Now, in the last few months, our interactions with the world around us has been changed so much by our understanding in terms of clean and unclean. You know, the difference between cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing, that maybe some of us didn't know there was a difference between all of those things until the CDC published a lot of articles about it. 5 months ago, if you were to walk down the sidewalk and someone was coming towards you and they abruptly went to the other side of the street so that they didn't have to walk by you, that would have been rude. Was there something wrong with me? Is there a reason that this person didn't want to walk by me? Today, that's like expected. Not only is it not rude, but it's considered an act of kindness that that person is giving you that wide breath. 5 months ago, if you shook someone's hand and then immediately got out your hand sanitizer, that would be rude. But today, that would be expected. Actually, the expected behavior would be not to touch each other at all, right? It is amazing how as we move through time, how these expectations and these ideas and these laws of what is good and right, what is expected, what is not expected, can change so drastically. So 2,000 years ago, Jesus is facing some heat from what the other leaders were trying to tell him was the right way of doing things, or the traditional way of doing things. Now, what happens in these verses before our lectionary that we see this morning is the scribes and the Pharisees, who are basically like Jewish pastors and bishops from a slightly different denomination, are coming at him, and they are telling him that he is not focusing on the right things. Now, many of these laws are based on Old Testament scriptures in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, which is, if you've ever read Leviticus, it's mostly just rules, like pages and pages of rules, telling you all of the tiny little things that you should and should not do. Now, many of these, and they serve like a very, very practical purpose, right? Like, you know, you should wash your hands before you eat. That's a really practical thing, right? Which foods that they should mix together, which foods that they just shouldn't eat at all. But these laws are not like the be-all, end-all to our faith. And that's what Jesus is really challenging here. He's saying, God is not going to smite you because you didn't wash your hands. That's not something that's really important to God about each and every one of us. Disclaimer, you should definitely wash your hands before you eat. It's a really good idea. It's sanitary, especially right now. However, your salvation is not dependent on it. That is what Jesus is really trying to tell us. See, their religion is practiced by focusing on rules. But I don't just want to pick on Judaism here. Let's be very clear. Christians also really like rules and are really good at focusing on the rules and who is in and who is out and who's done the right things and who hasn't based on the sets of rules that we have also created. Sometimes I think that our Christian ancestors really didn't get it and created the exact same kind of rules that Jesus was trying to teach us to abolish in the first place. Because Jesus was like, heal people here, love this outcast over here, give money to the poor over here, and then heal this person over here. And somehow the early Christian church heard, do these things to be right, and that's wrong, the end. And over the course of Christian history, we have carried this too far, right? Think about how many different Christian denominations that there are, all of whom broke apart over the last 1,500 years because either they broke the rules of the church or they just didn't like them, so they created their own denomination and their own set of rules. That's how we got to where we are today. Especially as Lutherans, let's be clear, our denomination was invented because Martin Luther didn't like the rules and disagreed with them and created a whole new structure. Now this continues, right? And then now how many different types of Lutherans are there? And we just keep going because everyone has a slightly different rules. And we keep creating more and more rules. And more people are leaving all of these denominations every single day because sometimes we've lost sight that our purpose is about love and grace and mercy through Christ and not so much about rules. And Jesus is trying to put this in perspective to his listeners, that God cares about what your impact in the world is. God cares about what you do. God cares about what you say and how that affects other people. You can wash your hands all day long, but if you use those clean hands to lie, cheat, steal, and kill, what was the point of washing them in the first place? Right? To change the subject slightly, and by slightly, I mean 100%. How many of you have ever seen the Hobbit movies or read the books? Great, so about 4 people, excellent, that's what I thought. So they're all currently on Hulu Live right now, and so I'm rewatching them. And I had only seen them for the first time last year, because I made the mistake of telling my friend Brian that I had never seen them, and so that meant we had to sit down and watch all 3 of them in one sitting. So this is a whole day project because these are 3.5-hour movies. But as the adventure went down, a brief recap of the first 2 movies. So the first 3/4 of the book, if you read the book. A bunch of dwarves used to live in this mountain where they had a really cool city and a bunch of gold. A dragon comes and claims the mountain and the gold for himself and either kills or displaces all of the dwarves. A bunch of years later, a group of the dwarves meet up with a wizard who agrees to help them take back their mountain and reclaim all of their gold. And they employ a hobbit because they're really tiny and quiet because they need him to go into the mountain and steal a little magical stone that will give them the right to own their mountain again. This is essentially the first 2 movies. At the very beginning of the 3rd movie, they finally get to the mountain and slay the dragon and reclaim it. Now, a bunch of other races like elves and men and orcs, which are big kind of gross, terrifying creatures, all of these other armies come to the mountain because they all want to take it over for themselves. Now, the first time I watched this, at this point in time in our theatrical journey, I just can't anymore. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you about to tell me that for the next 3 hours, the entire point of this movie is all of these people are going to fight over a bunch of gold? That's all that's going to happen? And my friend Brian looked right back at me and said, people kill each other in this world every day for far less. Matthew 15 again. But Peter said to him, explain this parable to us. Then he said, are you still without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into your mouth enters the stomach and then goes into the sewers? But what comes out of your mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. For out of the heart is what comes evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, and slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a person. See, the new commandment that Jesus leaves us with in the gospel is love your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. This law trumps all of the other laws. That's what we believe as Christians. That this new law that Jesus gets is now the lens for which we interpret all of the other laws. Jesus is trying to tell the Pharisees that there is no point in being clean or unclean, this kind of Jew or that kind of Jew, if you don't treat other people and yourself with respect and love. That is the most important part. That God is calling us to be kind, to be respectful, and to care for one another. We are human, and we all have the capacity of destruction, both of ourselves and of others. And we're all going to stumble, and we're going to fall short of this new commandment that Jesus gives and make mistakes. And then some more mistakes. Because we're human, right? But we are also beloved children of God. And there's grace for that. To illustrate what Jesus is getting at here in our lectionary, with just one more mountain in battle, I want to share with you this song that I sang growing up at a Lutheran summer camp. That was sang so much that it had to be put on a limit. It was only allowed to be requested twice per week, because as a counselor, which I was eventually a counselor there, you get so tired of this song so quickly. But it's so popular with the kids because of the message that's inside. And I want to read it to you. It's called One Tin Soldier. It says, "Listen, people, to a story that was written long ago about a kingdom on a mountain and the valley folk below. And on the mountain was a treasure buried deep beneath a stone. And the valley people swore they'd have it for their very own. So the people of the valley sent a message up the hill asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they'd kill. Came an answer from the kingdom, with our brothers we will share all the riches of the mountain, all the treasures buried there. Now the valley cried with anger, mount your horses, draw your sword. And they killed the mountain people, so they won their just reward. Now they stood before the treasure on the mountain dark and red, turned the stone and looked beneath it. Peace on earth was all it said." And the chorus is, "Go ahead and hate your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven, you can justify it in the end. There won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day, and on the bloody morning after, one tin soldier rides away." Now, whether you always remember to wash your hands or not, God is not going to cast you out. Though in the year 2020, it's probably best if you do. But Jesus tells us that it's not what God is asking us and not what it's to do. It's not that simple. What is that simple is the love of God. And the one thing that Jesus gives us. Love God, love others. And the thing that I think we forget sometimes, love yourself. Because each of you are, and we all are, these beloved children of God. Amen.